Chapter 17. The Pharmacy. Chapter 17. The Pharmacy. It's just us. Just the four of us, no one else. The raider sobbed uncontrollably, words tripping over themselves as he begged for his life. But his eyes, they darted left and right, scanning for an escape, lying through his teeth. He wasn't alone. Hanks knew it instantly. There had to be more of them nearby, an ambush point or a camp close enough to matter. He was about to press further when, rah! A wave of guttural roars exploded from the distance, closing in fast, from multiple directions. The gunshots had been the pebble thrown into still water, and now the ripples were becoming a tidal wave. Not just 3, not 5, dozens. Walkers were already spilling out from side streets, alleyways, and abandoned homes. Hanks, get back here, there's too many. Kenny's voice cut through the chaos, punctuated by gunfire. They were already engaging the first wave closing in on the truck. No time. Cold resolve flashed across Hanks's eyes. The crowbar at the raider's throat drove forward, then cut sideways in one precise motion. A wet gasp. Blood bubbled from the man's throat as he clawed at the wound, body convulsing before collapsing in silence. Blunt weapon skill up pointing arrow. Blunt weapon LV.4, 0.400. +4 attribute express. Hanks didn't spare the corpse a glance. He sprinted back to the pump, snatched up the oil can, barely a quarter full, and bolted for the truck. Walkers were now so close that the nearest one was less than 10 meters from the tailgate. Fill it, now. Hanks shoved the can into Kenny's hands and lifted his pistol. Bang, bang, 2 walkers dropped, skulls bursting like overripe fruit. Headshot kill, handgun XP +2000, police mastery bonus. Handgun XP +2000, handgun LV.25, 0.25 +2 attribute XP. Kenny fumbled with the gas can, pouring as much as he could into the tank, half of it splashing to the ground. Hurry, please hurry, Katya cried, voice shaking. She could already see dozens of silhouettes staggering toward them. Go. The very second the last drop hit the tank, Kenny threw himself behind the wheel and twisted the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, nearly died. Not enough fuel. Come on, come on, come on. Kenny slammed the ignition and floored the pedal, praying to any god still watching. Click, sputter, vroom. The engine roared back to life. Move. Hanks vaulted into the truck bed. Lee dove into the back seat at the last second. Hold on, Kenny barked. Gear or no gear, he slammed the accelerator. The tires screeched, the truck lurched forward, plowing through 2 walkers with a sickening crunch as they sped away from the collapsing gas station. Everyone was gasping for breath, hands trembling. The air was thick with gasoline fumes, blood, and the stench of rot. Looking through the rear window, they watched the station vanish beneath a flood of walkers. The raiders' bodies disappeared under clawing hands and tearing teeth. Minutes later, the truck limped into Macon, rattling like a dying beast. Each shift of the gear came with a grinding scream from the engine and a new curse from Kenny. Fuel's done. Kenny stared at the gauge, already pinned at 0. Panic crept into his voice. Macon's streets were a maze of wrecked cars and shattered storefronts. The distant shapes of walkers were converging toward the sound of the engine. They weren't just in trouble, they were about to be buried. We need cover, fast. Hanks shouted from the truck bed, scanning the buildings with a hunter's precision. There, left corner, a pharmacy. Lee pointed ahead, spotting a familiar storefront at the intersection. It was a neighborhood pharmacy, surprisingly intact compared to the rest of the street. Every window in the front entrance had been reinforced with thick wooden boards, leaving only narrow slits for visibility. That's it, right there. Kenny latched onto the sight like a drowning man spotting land and jerked the wheel. The engine responded with one last weak groan, and died completely. All dashboard lights flickered out. The pickup coasted forward a few more meters on momentum alone before rolling to a dead stop, about 10 meters from the pharmacy entrance. Bone dry. Fuck. Kenny slammed the steering wheel. The horn let out a single strained honk, then died with it. The noise drew the attention of nearby walkers. Rah! The closest few were already at the truck, slamming rotting hands against the windows. Out, move, get to the pharmacy, now. Hanks barked, kicking a walker clinging to the door. The rotten body flew back several feet. He jumped out first, crowbar sweeping in a brutal arc, cracking through a walker's skull like a rotten melon. Hurry, hurry, Kenny bailed out and used the butt of his shotgun to smash back an approaching corpse, shielding his wife and son. Lee pulled Clementine close, smashing a walker's face with the butt of his Glock to clear a path. They advanced while fighting, step by step. Walkers pressed in from all sides, groans rising into a hellish chorus as the streets closed around them. Ah! Duck stumbled over debris and fell face first to the pavement. A walker lunged at him instantly. Duck! Kenny's eyes widened in terror, but he froze. The angle was too tight, one wrong shot and he could hit his own son. Bang! Bang! Two sharp Glock shots cracked from the pharmacy entrance. The walker on top of Duck's small body, head burst apart and collapsed off him, splattering gore across the boy's shirt. Hanks snapped his head toward the gunfire. A woman in a white blouse stood at the doorway, Glock raised with practiced precision. Beside her was a young Asian guy dressed like a food delivery driver, gripping a length of pipe as a makeshift weapon. Get inside, move, the woman shouted, firing again to cover them. Relief washed through the group, but training and instinct made them glance to Hanks before moving. Go, inside, now. Hanks fired his last few rounds to clear their path and slammed in a fresh magazine mid-sprint. 4 comments 0 vote. Chapter 18. Nitroglycerin Tablets. Chapter 18. Nitroglycerin Tablets. Kenny covered the front while Katya scooped the still-shaken Duck into her arms. Lee gripped Clementine's hand. The group stumbled toward the pharmacy's open door, ragged and breathless. Hanks slipped through last. Bang! Glenn and Carly slammed the door shut behind them with all their strength, and Hanks jammed his crowbar into the latch to brace it. No sooner had the boards clicked into place than frantic pounding and scraping erupted from outside. Inside the shop the light was dim, thin shafts of sun leaking through the boarded slats. The air smelled of medicine, dust, and sweat. They pressed against the walls, chests heaving, hearts hammering. Before anyone could catch a breath, a sharp female voice sliced the hush. My God, how many people did you bring in? A long-haired woman in a black tank top barked from between the shelves. She turned on Carly, furious. I told you not to go out. What were you thinking? You went out, you fired a gun, and you brought back a bunch of strangers. The woman continued, I can't just watch them get bitten, there are 2 kids here. Carly snapped back fiercely, pointing at Duck and Clementine, still trembling. They're not just strangers. I've told you 100 times, don't open that damn door. I meant it. Lily's hands trembled with anger as she jabbed a finger toward Hanks and the newcomers. We don't know who they are or what they'll do to us. So what? One of them looks like a cop, does that make cops dangerous? Carly shot back, nodding at Hanks. From behind Lily, a large, white-haired man named Larry stepped forward. His face was hard as flint, his voice low and heavy. Who knows if he's a real cop or a fake? Larry said, scanning Duck's bloodied shirt with a grimace. Because of them, the walkers started slamming on the doors again. You want to die today? Lee stepped forward, trying to calm things. He didn't want fresh quarrels after barely surviving. Sir, there are 2 minors here. Larry didn't wait to hear the rest. His stare fixed on Duck. One of them's been bitten. Toss him out or smash his skull. He wasn't bitten. That's not his blood, Lee blurted. Don't you dare touch my boy. Kenny roared like an enraged lion, stepping between Larry and Duck, eyes blazing. Hanks had stayed out of the arguing since they came in, scanning the room for threats. When he judged the immediate danger clear, he crossed the floor without ceremony. He shoved the slightly warm barrel of his pistol into Larry's mouth. The weapon's cold muzzle and Hanks's voice were matter of fact, brutal. From now on, if I hear one more useless word out of you, I'll blow your brains out. Understand, you idiot? Hanks didn't bother to hide his killing intent. The stench of gunpowder and death hanging on Hanks's weapon instantly smothered all of Larry's swagger. Larry's eyes bulged with terror. A choked, guttural sound escaped his throat, but he didn't dare move. Even swallowing felt like it might set off the demon with a gun pressed to his mouth. The pharmacy fell into a suffocating silence. Lily instinctively raised her gun. But Hanks was faster. He drew his spare Beretta 92 and aimed at her in one fluid motion. Glenn and Carly stiffened, hands hovering near their weapons. I asked you a question, Hanks said softly, yet the words pierced every ear in the room. Do you understand? Larry gave the smallest nod, sweat beating down his temples. Hanks withdrew the gun and tapped the barrel against Larry's cheek, leaving a faint streak of gunpowder across his pale skin. Then, unexpectedly, Cat J's quiet voice cut through the silence. Everyone, stop for a second. Let's just introduce ourselves. We're all human, right? The suggestion, simple, human, broke through the madness. Hanks holstered his gun. Fine, he muttered. Make it quick. Lee stepped forward first. Lee Everett, used to teach history at the University of Georgia. Kenny followed, still clutching his shotgun. Kenny, fisherman. My wife's Katya, my boy's Duck. Katya gave a tired but polite nod. Hello. Glenn raised a hand awkwardly. Glenn, used to deliver pizzas. Guess that makes me the local errand guy now. Carly shrugged. Carly, reporter. Wabe radio. Lily hesitated but spoke anyway. Lily, military. My dad's Larry. Larry just grunted, still pale, avoiding Hanks's stare. Finally, all eyes turned to the man who had just taken command. Hanks, Atlanta PD. The way he said it, steady, professional, but weighed with exhaustion, made the others straighten unconsciously. Good. From now on, I'm the one giving orders. He holstered the weapon and immediately took command. Lee, Kenny, check the windows and doors. Make sure nothing's getting through. Glenn, right, you know this place. Check for any other exits that could become a problem. His voice was calm, firm, precise enough to snap everyone into action. In seconds, the scattered group began moving like a unit. Hanks stepped to a boarded window and peered through a narrow gap. Walkers swarmed the storefront, packed shoulder to shoulder. They weren't getting out anytime soon. This was worse than he expected. Behind him, Larry's face twisted, not with anger this time, but pain. The color drained from his cheeks. He clutched his chest, gasping, then stumbled backward and collapsed against the counter. Dad, Lily cried, rushing to catch him. He has heart problems, he needs his medication. Nitroglycerin tablets. Katya stepped forward, her voice alert and professional. She was a veterinarian, but medical knowledge was medical knowledge. Yes, Lily's earlier hostility was gone, replaced with raw worry. We came here to get to the pharmacy's storage room. Please, I'm begging you. Find the meds. All eyes turned to Hanks. Stay with your father. Keep him calm, Hanks instructed, tone returning to clipped, controlled authority. Doug, Kenny, front and back entrances. Reinforce the barricades. Report anything unusual immediately. Katya, Carly, take the kids to a clean corner. Check Duck. Make sure he's unhurt. He issued orders with soldier-like clarity. Kenny shot Larry and Lily a look of pure resentment, but the situation was bigger than his pride. He spat on the floor, slung his shotgun, and headed for the door with Doug. Katya and Carly guided the shaken children to a safer corner and began soothing them. I might be able to help, Glenn said cautiously, raising a hand like a student in class. I know a motel nearby. There might still be cars, and gas. If we can hotwire one, we could get out of here. Hanks looked at him. Somehow, Glenn's head felt very suitable for use as a baseball. Ahem, fine, be careful. Hanks shoved the thought aside and pulled out the walkie-talkie he'd been carrying since the farm. Same frequency as Clementine's. Stay in contact. Safety first. Don't play hero. Glenn took the radio, nodded firmly, and, with help from Kenny and Doug, slipped out through a narrow gap at the back door and vanished into the alley. With immediate tasks set, Hanks turned toward a closed office door deeper inside the pharmacy. Lee, he said, with me, we clear the office, see if there's anything useful. Lee nodded. The two advanced, weapons ready, and pushed the door open. The office was small and dusty, an old desk, a filing cabinet, shelves stacked with papers. After confirming no walkers inside, Lee's eyes landed on the desk. His face drained of color. His feet rooted to the floor. His breathing hitched, a deep, personal panic rising from someplace old and scarred. -- 2 comments 0 vote. Chapter 19, Rescuing Glenn. Chapter 19, Rescuing Glenn. Hanks noticed the shift in Lee's expression. He followed Lee's gaze, landing on a framed family photo resting on the dusty desk. A kind elderly couple, Lee himself, younger, smiling. And another man whose features resembled his, likely his brother. Every face in that photo was warm, full of life, now long gone. Oh, God, Lee's voice trembled as he reached out and slowly lifted the frame. His fingers brushed across each face in the picture, as if afraid they'd shatter at the slightest touch. His shoulders sank, a crushing mix of sorrow and guilt wrapped around him like a shroud. This is my family, Lee whispered hoarsely. My parents, He couldn't continue. Hanks didn't need him to. He knew exactly what that unfinished sentence meant. Lee had gone to prison for killing the senator who was sleeping with his wife. He lost everything, his freedom, his reputation, and never got the chance to say goodbye to his family. Now, in this hellish new world, that regret cut deeper than ever. He stared at the photo, at the life he once had, the life he destroyed with his own hands, and the hopelessness of the present pressed down on him with unbearable weight. Hanks remained silent beside him. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound shallow or cheap. A long moment passed before Lee drew a shaky breath. He clutched the frame tightly, as if it was the last piece of himself left in this world. When he finally looked up, eyes rimmed red, his voice was ragged. I was supposed to protect them, not rot in a prison cell while, now Hanks met his gaze, steady, unflinching. You can't change the past, Lee. His voice was calm, firm, grounded with a quiet strength that left no room for self-pity. Keep that photo. Remember them. You being alive is proof they existed. He pointed toward the door. Right now, there are people out there who still need us. Clementine. Duck. Even that old bastard. His daughter is begging for his life. Focus on what you can control, on what you can do now. The words hit like a jolt, pulling Lee out of the abyss of grief. He stared at the photo once more, then tucked it carefully inside his shirt, close to his heart. Another deep breath. His sorrow didn't vanish, but something steadier settled in its place, resolve. You're right, Lee nodded. His voice wasn't steady, but it was back. We get the meds, we survive. The office door suddenly swung open with a bang. Hanks, Lee. Clementine came rushing in, yellow hoodie bright against the dim light. She clutched her walkie-talkie tightly, alarm and worry in her eyes. The radio, she panted, pushing it into Hanks's hand. It's Glenn, he sounds really bad. Hanks immediately lifted the radio. Lee stepped closer too, grief shoved aside for the moment. Glenn's voice crackled through the speaker, broken by static, panicked breathing, and distant walker groans. Anyone there? Damn it. KHT, I'm trapped at the motel. Hanks pressed the talk button. Glenn, it's Hanks. What's happening over there? Hanks. Oh thank God. Relief flooded Glenn's voice, desperate and strained. I tried to grab some supplies for everyone, but I must have attracted a whole herd. They're everywhere, they won't leave. I'm stuck inside a soda cooler. If I move or make a sound, I'm dead. Hanks replied instantly. Stay calm, Glenn. Sit tight, I'm coming for you. He looked around the pharmacy, meeting each set of eyes. Lee, Clementine, and further out, Kenny, Lily, Carly, all tense from the sudden alarm. A choice was forming, and everyone understood what it meant. You all heard it, Hanks said. His tone wasn't loud, but carried a calm authority that steadied the room. Glenn's trapped at the motel. I'm going to bring him back. I'm going with you. Lee stepped forward without hesitation, eyes resolute. And me. Kenny's grip tightened on his shotgun. No. Hanks shut it down instantly, sharp and final. Your job is to hold this place until I return. Man, we need you here. Kenny growled, unable to stop the fear creeping into his voice. He had gotten used to having Hanks take the lead. Without him, he felt anchorless, uneasy. That's why I need to get back quickly, Hanks replied, meeting his eyes. Hold this place. Wait for me. I'll bring him back. He swept his gaze across the group. We're low on food and gas. We can't move this many people yet. Then he crouched down to meet Clementine at eye level. Clem, you have an important job. Stay by the radio. Keep it on. Can you do that? Clementine nodded hard, tiny fists clenched, trying her best to look brave despite the fear tugging at her eyes. Hanks made sure everyone had a role, even small ones. It wasn't just delegation, it was calculated psychology. Give panicking people a task, an anchor, so they wouldn't spiral into fear or create more problems. Hanks reloaded his P226, checking each magazine while mentally mapping the route to the motel. Once ready, he pushed open the back door. His silhouette slipped out, and vanished into the dying light of Macon's ruined streets. The air outside was thick with rot, dust, and the faint metallic tang of dried blood. Hanks moved like a shadow, ears sharp, eyes scanning every rooftop, alley, and window. He avoided the main streets swarming with walkers. Only when one stumbled into his path, too close to bypass, did he react, snatching up makeshift weapons on the spot or stepping in fast enough to snap its neck before it could groan. He was cutting through a narrow alley, planning a shortcut to the motel, when low voices drifted toward him. "Damn it, where the hell are Johnny and the others? They were supposed to meet us at the gas station. Look at the blood and drag marks, whoever hit them wasn't a damn walker. No shit, bullet holes in the skull. Someone executed them. If I find the bastard who spread out, they can't be far. They killed our men, we're not letting this go." Hanks slid forward just enough to peek around the corner. 7 or 8 men, rough, armed, and furious, crowded the alley mouth. They carried bats, pistols, and a couple of pump-action shotguns. Looking for their buddies, the 4 raiders he killed at the gas station. Everything clicked instantly. Hanks memorized their faces, then silently eased back and ghosted away down another path. Dusk was settling fast. Without night vision, a gunfight in the dark was a losing game. In the dark, muzzle flashes become targets. When bullets start flying, even the strongest, superhuman physique, still dies from a couple of shots, just takes a moment longer. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 20, I'll grant you mercy, good night. Chapter 20, I'll grant you mercy, good night. Nighttime. The motor in. Hanks crouched low, gliding along the outer wall like a shadow come alive. He moved with a predator's patience, each step silent, every breath measured. Beyond the wall, he could hear the faint shuffle of decaying feet, the uneven rhythm of the dead. By his count, 5, maybe 6 walkers roamed aimlessly in the courtyard. He was just about to chart a quiet elimination route when, thud, a heavy metallic noise echoed beside him, followed by a series of faint, desperate knocks. Hanks's eyes narrowed, his hand slid instinctively to the P226 holstered at his thigh. He crept toward the source, muscles coiled tight, the weapon raised and ready. The noise came from a large ice machine by the wall. Its metal door trembled, then creaked open just enough for a pair of terrified eyes to peek through the gap. "Glenn," Hanks whispered sharply, gun still leveled. His finger rested inside the trigger guard, ready to act. A muffled gasp came from inside. It's me, Officer Hanks." "Oh, thank God." Glenn's voice cracked with relief. "I thought I was about to end up as a frozen lunch special." He scrambled out of the icebox on all fours, covered in frost, sweat, and grime. His teeth were chattering, and his breath steamed in the cold air. "You good to walk?" Hanks asked curtly, scanning the shadows. His tone was clipped, professional, no room for warmth. I think so," Glenn stammered, wobbling to his feet, one hand gripping the ice machine for balance. "Then move," Hanks ordered, pressing against the wall to stay hidden from the walkers. They had just started inching toward the alley when Glenn grabbed Hanks's arm. Wait, we can't leave yet." Glenn's voice trembled with urgency. He pointed toward a corner unit on the motel's 2nd floor. "There's a girl up there. I heard her crying. She's trapped in one of the rooms." Hanks followed his gesture. Upstairs, one door had been boarded from the outside, wood panels trembling under repeated impacts. 2 walkers clawed and slammed against it relentlessly. From inside, faint sobs leaked through the cracks. "You sure she's alive?" Hanks asked, his tone suddenly colder. His instincts, those of a cop who'd seen every kind of setup, demanded caution. "I'm sure," Glenn insisted, wide-eyed. "I talked to her. She's scared out of her mind, but she's alive. We can't just leave her." Hanks studied his face for a few long seconds. The kid was terrified, but not lying. He exhaled slowly through his nose. "Fine," he said at last. "But we do this my way." His voice hardened, carrying quiet authority. "First priority, clear the walkers. Then we move on the girl. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Glenn whispered fiercely, nodding like an eager recruit. Whether it was the cop training or that stubborn trace of moral instinct he couldn't shake. Hanks found himself stepping back into the role, protector, tactician, fool with a badge who still believed in saving people. "Stay close," he muttered, scanning the courtyard. His eyes caught a faint gleam on the motel's cracked wall. A screwdriver jammed between bricks. Without hesitation, he pulled it free, weighing it in his grip. Then, with the practiced precision of a man who'd done this too many times, he stalked up behind a wandering walker. One silent step, another, then crack, the screwdriver plunged through the base of its skull. The corpse stiffened, a faint gurgle escaping its lips before it crumpled soundlessly to the ground. Hanks steadied the walker's collapsing corpse with one arm, easing it to the floor so gently that even the dull thump was swallowed by silence. He exhaled slowly through his nose, eyes sweeping the courtyard again. Then he slipped deeper into the motel's interior, every movement a study in stealth. Up ahead, another walker was wandering aimlessly, groaning under its breath. Beside it, through the cracked glass of a display cabinet, something glinted faintly red. A fire axe, locked behind shattered safety glass. Hanks narrowed his eyes, rolled his shoulders once, and raised the screwdriver in his hand like a throwing knife. He gauged the distance, then let fly. Crack, the screwdriver whistled through the air, backed by his superhuman strength and reflexes. It buried itself through the walker's skull with a wet, crunching pop, then pinned it to the wall like an insect on a collector's board. Blood and gray pulp sprayed outward in an arc. Glenn flinched, covering his mouth to stop a gasp. Hanks was already moving, fast and silent, retrieving the axe. He gave it a quick swing to test the weight. Perfect balance, heavy enough to split bone, light enough to move quick. "This'll do," he muttered. "For clearing the living and the dead." He took point with the axe in hand, Glenn following close behind as they crept up the narrow stairway. On the second-floor landing, the sound of pounding grew louder. Two walkers were still hammering at a door at the far end of the hall, boards bending with each blow. "Stay behind me." Hanks burst from cover in one blur of motion, closing the distance in seconds. The first walker didn't even turn before the axe came down. Thwack! The blade split its skull cleanly down the middle, spraying dark filth across the peeling wallpaper. The second lunged. Hanks sidestepped, pivoted, and swept the axe horizontally. The edge caught the walker's neck mid-motion, shearing it halfway through. The head flopped sideways, attached by a shred of muscle, before toppling to the floor with a dull thud. Quick, clean, precise. No wasted motion, no sound beyond what death demanded. He wiped the blade once on the nearest curtain and turned to the door. 3 sharp knocks. "Hey," Hanks called softly, his tone firm but calm. "This is Officer Hanks. The walkers outside are down. You're safe to come out now." For a moment, only silence. Then a voice shrieked from inside, hoarse, panicked, almost feral. "Go away. Please go away. Don't open the door. Please. Just leave me alone." Glenn stepped forward, desperate. "She's terrified, man. We just need to talk her down." Hanks frowned. He didn't answer, just raised the axe. Crack! The board splintered under one swing. Another kick from his boot blew the door open, hinges shrieking as the frame gave way. Inside, the room was dim and stale with rot and fear. A young woman huddled in the far corner, back pressed against the wall, one hand clamped over her abdomen. But crimson seeped steadily between her fingers, spreading through her shirt and down into the carpet beneath her. Her skin was ashen, her breathing ragged, and her eyes, once full of life, were clouding to a dull, gray-blue haze. Hanks froze. He didn't need to ask. Glenn saw it too and sucked in a breath, his hand flying to his mouth. You've been bitten," Hanks said quietly, switching the axe to his left hand, his right already near his thigh holster. The woman nodded weakly, tears mixed with sweat on her face. I didn't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. "I just didn't want to turn. Please, just go. Leave me." Glenn staggered back a step, eyes wide with disbelief. His voice cracked. "Jesus, she's dying." Hanks's face was unreadable. His eyes, however, softened, just for a heartbeat. Then he spoke, low and even. "Need a hand with that." The woman blinked, startled, then saw the look in his eyes. When he drew his P226, she finally understood. Her expression broke into something between sorrow and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "Officer, wait, what are you?" Glenn stammered, his voice rising in panic. Click. The safety disengaged with a soft mechanical sigh. Hanks's movements were steady, almost reverent. The woman leaned her head back against the wall, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Tears glimmered on her cheeks in the dim light. "I'll grant you mercy," Hanks murmured, raising the pistol. His tone was solemn, like a prayer. "Good night." The barrel aligned perfectly with the center of her brow. Her breathing slowed, her body relaxed. There was no more fear, only peace and release. Glenn tried to speak, but no sound came out. He turned his head away, hand trembling. Bang! The report of the shot filled the small room like thunder, echoing off the peeling walls before fading into silence. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Handgun proficiency +1000. Attribute +1. The woman's body slumped backward, sliding down the wall, a faint smile frozen on her lips. Let's move, Hanks said flatly, reholstering his sidearm without looking back. That shot'll draw them. He turned and started down the hallway, the fire axe still slick in his left hand, blood dripping rhythmically onto the carpet. Glenn lingered a moment longer, his face pale as chalk. Then, swallowing hard, he tore his gaze away from the corpse and followed. Outside, the first faint groans began to rise again. The dead were coming, and mercy, once given, would have to wait until the next life. To be continued.